Samantha Reed thought she was helping her troubled younger sister by inviting Chloe into her home. But what began as a gesture of kindness spiraled into a chilling nightmare. Chloe didn't just envy Samantha's perfect life. She wanted to steal it completely, starting with an affair with her brother-in-law, Daniel Hayes, and ending with a slow, calculated plan to poison her own sister. This is the twisted true crime story of a family destroyed by obsession, betrayal, and murder. The trial became a media sensation, a sister poisoning her own blood, all to steal her husband and assume her life. The story shocked everyone who heard it. Chloe's confession was detailed and chilling. She described her obsession with Daniel as love and her hatred for Samantha as justified jealousy. In court, she painted herself as someone driven by years of neglect and rejection, spinning a narrative that made her sound more like a victim than the predator she had become. But the evidence told a different story, one that the jury couldn't ignore. Footage from the hidden cameras showed Chloe carefully tampering with drinks and lingering too long in places she didn't belong. The toxicology reports linked the same poison in Samantha's blood to the substance found in Chloe's tea. Internet searches, journal entries, and even notes saved on Chloe's phone clearly mapped out a plan that had been forming for months. Her intent had been calculated. She wanted Samantha out of the picture, and she wanted Daniel and the children for herself. Daniel's role remained murky. He claimed ignorance of the poisoning, and no direct evidence connected him to the plan. But his affair with Chloe and the betrayal of his wife were undeniable. The public turned against him quickly. He lost clients in his real estate firm, faced aggressive online backlash, and was ultimately pushed out of the company he helped build. He tried to maintain custody of the children, but a family court judge sided with Samantha. The emotional damage he'd caused and the environment he had helped foster was too great to ignore. Chloe was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. In her final court appearance, she showed no remorse. She didn't apologize to Samantha or acknowledge the pain she had caused. To the end, she clung to the idea that she had done what was necessary to live the life she believed she deserved. Her coldness left the courtroom silent. For Samantha, survival brought no comfort. The wounds were deep and complex, not just from the betrayal, but from the fact that she had come so close to dying without ever realizing it. Her recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional and psychological. She moved out of the house where it all happened and relocated to a quieter city with her children. She took time away from work, focusing instead on rebuilding trust, stability, and a sense of normalcy for herself and her family. She never spoke to Daniel again. Their marriage was formally dissolved, and any communication was handled strictly through legal channels. Samantha focused on healing, therapy, and providing a safe, honest life for her children. The trauma had altered her, but it hadn't broken her. She refused to be defined by what Chloe had done. The story became a cautionary tale in the neighborhood, a reminder that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from within the family. What began as an act of kindness ended in betrayal, obsession, and nearly death. Samantha lived, but nothing was ever the same again. Samantha moved carefully after learning the truth. Panic sat heavy in her chest, but she knew acting rashly would tip them off. Chloe and Daniel had betrayed her, and now it was clear that betrayal had turned into something deadly. Someone, almost certainly Chloe, was poisoning her. But Samantha also suspected Daniel's involvement. Whether he knew the full extent or not, he had let it go this far. Her life and the safety of her children now depended on staying calm and acting smart. She began pretending everything was fine, smiling through dinners, making small talk, and going through the motions of her daily routines. But behind the scenes, she was planning. The hidden cameras she'd already installed became her lifeline. She added more, one in the pantry, another in the upstairs hallway, and one above the medicine cabinet. She began collecting evidence, watching Chloe prepare tea in the mornings when Samantha wasn't looking, observing Daniel's late-night talks with Chloe in the kitchen, and seeing how often Chloe searched through drawers and cabinets with disturbing familiarity. She also quietly consulted with a private investigator, giving him access to her recordings and findings. She avoided the police for now, fearing a rushed report without evidence would tip off Chloe. Meanwhile, she stopped drinking anything Chloe prepared and only pretended to take food or drinks handed to her. Her symptoms began to fade. The headaches stopped. Her nausea disappeared, and her strength slowly returned. That alone confirmed her fears. The poisoning had been subtle, but persistent. Someone wanted her to die slowly. Chloe, unaware her plan was unraveling, grew bolder. She began wearing Samantha's perfume, borrowing her clothes, and even once slipped up and referred to the children as her family during a conversation with a neighbor. It was subtle, but chilling. She was no longer hiding her desire to step into Samantha's life entirely. The thought terrified Samantha, but it also steeled her resolve. The final tipping point came one Friday evening. Samantha pretended to have a migraine and asked Chloe to make her usual bedtime tea. She then quietly switched her cup with the one she'd prepared herself, identical in every way except for the fact it contained no foreign substances. Chloe's cup, however, she carefully saved after pouring it into a separate bottle. Within an hour, Chloe complained of dizziness. By midnight, she collapsed in the upstairs hallway. Samantha called an ambulance, keeping her voice calm but urgent. At the hospital, doctors confirmed Chloe had ingested a harmful level of a household toxin. Toxicology matched the exact same substance found in Samantha's blood just weeks earlier. When questioned, Samantha handed over her hidden camera footage, printed browser histories, and a sealed bottle of the tainted tea. The evidence was overwhelming. Chloe was arrested in her hospital bed the following morning. She confessed quickly under pressure, admitting to the poisoning and the affair, but insisted Daniel knew nothing. Still, Samantha wasn't sure if she believed that. Everything she had once trusted had collapsed. Her home, her marriage, her own sister turned against her in the most intimate and horrifying way. Samantha began to feel it before she could explain it. A distance in her marriage that hadn't been there before, a shift in the energy of her home that made her uneasy. Daniel was still present, still playing the role of devoted husband and father, but something in his eyes had changed. He was more distracted, more reserved, and he avoided intimate conversations. Samantha noticed the way he responded when Chloe entered the room, how his posture subtly straightened, how he suddenly seemed more engaged. At first, she dismissed it as paranoia. Chloe had been through a rough time, and Daniel was just being supportive. But that uneasy feeling only grew stronger. Then came the whispers. A neighbor mentioned seeing Daniel and Chloe together at a coffee shop without Samantha. Another said they'd bumped into them at a park, the kids nowhere in sight. These weren't firm accusations, but enough to seed doubt. Samantha brushed it off in public, but her mind kept circling the idea. She started observing more closely Chloe's growing confidence in the house, the way she used Samantha's kitchen as if it were her own, and how she and Daniel shared private jokes that Samantha wasn't part of. Late one evening, while folding laundry, Samantha noticed a shirt that wasn't hers, a men's shirt she'd never seen before. She asked Daniel about it, and he shrugged it off. Chloe said nothing. That moment lingered with her. A few days later, Samantha picked up Chloe's phone to hand it to her, and saw a preview of a message on the lock screen. It was brief, but clear. Something intimate. Something that shouldn't exist between a husband and a sister-in-law. Samantha didn't confront either of them. Not yet. Instead, she began keeping a quiet record. She wrote down times, patterns, odd behaviors. She started checking browser histories, finding that pages had been cleared. She installed a camera near the front door and one discreetly facing the kitchen, telling no one. At first, there was nothing conclusive. But after 2 weeks, she found footage of Daniel and Chloe sitting unusually close in the kitchen late at night. Their body language was unmistakable, intimate and familiar. She paused the video, hands trembling. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real. Still, Samantha said nothing. Confrontation was not enough, not when her sister had invaded her life so completely. She needed to understand how deep it went. She began reviewing Chloe's recent internet history from the family computer. What she found chilled her. Search. Terms like how to start over after a spouse dies, lethal household substances, and accidental overdose symptoms appeared. Suddenly, the betrayal turned into something darker, something dangerous. Samantha began to question everything. The strange taste in her morning tea, the headaches that had come and gone, and the lingering nausea that had started a month ago. She booked a full medical screening. The blood work revealed low traces of a common but dangerous toxin, one that builds in the body over time. It wasn't high enough to kill, not yet, but it was there. She was being poisoned. And someone in her own home wanted her gone. What began as harmless attention soon shifted into something far more dangerous. Chloe, feeling more secure under her sister's roof, started blurring the lines between gratitude and desire. Daniel, once simply a brother-in-law, became the object of her fixation. He had everything she had ever wanted: a stable life, a successful career, and the love of a woman Chloe had always envied. But more than that, he had started noticing her in a way no man had before. That attention became addictive. Chloe studied Samantha closely, learning her habits, her routines, and the subtle cracks in her marriage. She noticed how often Daniel was left alone in the evenings while Samantha handled the children or worked late on her laptop. She saw the moments when he sighed with quiet frustration or stared blankly at the television, disconnected from the family around him. Chloe inserted herself into those spaces. She offered to pour his wine, made jokes that brought a smile to his tired face, and found excuses to sit close, brush against him, or make lingering eye contact. It was calculated, but disguised as casual warmth. Daniel at first didn't think much of it. Chloe was young and charming, and maybe a little too flirtatious, but she was family. Still, the attention was flattering. He felt seen. Something he hadn't experienced in years. Samantha was a loving wife, but the spark between them had dulled under the weight of everyday responsibilities. With Chloe, things felt light, easy, exciting. What he didn't see was how deeply Chloe's attraction had rooted itself. It was no longer just admiration. It had grown into obsession. The affair didn't begin with a dramatic moment. It started in silence, in the lingering stares and the closeness that lasted a second too long. Then came the excuses to be alone together, to have private conversations that gradually became more personal. They shared stories, secrets, and frustrations. Daniel felt understood and Chloe felt desired. One evening, while Samantha was out with the kids, that tension finally snapped. What should have felt like guilt only deepened the connection between them. The secrecy made it feel more powerful, more urgent. After that night, their affair continued in the shadows of Samantha's home. They were careful, never too obvious, never too close when others were around. But behind closed doors, their connection intensified. Chloe was no longer satisfied with brief encounters. She began fantasizing about a future where she didn't have to sneak around, a future where Samantha was no longer in the picture. Her thoughts grew darker. Chloe saw herself not as a homewrecker, but as someone taking back what she believed was always meant for her. She justified it by telling herself that Samantha had never truly appreciated what she had. Daniel was wasted on her, and Chloe could offer him something more, something real. But what Chloe didn't realize was that her fixation was distorting her reality. What she believed to be love was just control in disguise, and the deeper she went, the harder it became to pull herself out. Samantha Reed had always been the golden child. Growing up, she was the one who followed the rules, earned good grades, and made her parents proud. By the time she was 32, she had what most would call the perfect life. She was married to Daniel Hayes, a successful real estate developer, and together they lived in a pristine home in a quiet, upper-middle-class New Jersey suburb. With 2 healthy children, a beautiful house, and an active social calendar, Samantha's life seemed like a picture of stability and happiness. Her younger sister, Chloe, was the opposite. At 27, Chloe was struggling to find her footing. She had dropped out of college, bounced from job to job, and had recently ended a tumultuous relationship that left her both financially drained and emotionally bruised. She had nowhere to go. When Samantha offered her a room in their house to get back on her feet, Chloe accepted, grateful for the escape and the comfort it offered. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, just a few weeks until she figured things out. At first, the arrangement worked well. Chloe kept a low profile, helped out with the kids, and stayed out of Samantha and Daniel's way. But over time, her presence in the home began to feel different. She started dressing up even when she wasn't going anywhere, wearing perfume, and taking extra care with her appearance. She spent more time in the kitchen when Daniel was home, laughing at his jokes, joining in on conversations she wasn't invited to. It was subtle, but the dynamic began to shift. Daniel, who had grown tired of his repetitive home routine, found Chloe's energy refreshing. She was younger, freer, and gave him attention in a way that Samantha hadn't in years. It wasn't that Samantha neglected him. She was just busy. Between work, the children, and running the household, her energy was always divided. Chloe, however, had all the time in the world to engage, to listen, and to notice him. Neighbors started to whisper. Chloe was seen more often with Daniel than with Samantha. They took the kids out together, went on errands together, and even showed up at school events side by side. While it didn't appear inappropriate at first glance, the closeness was undeniable to those who were paying attention. Samantha, consumed by her routines, didn't notice how quickly Chloe was embedding herself into her family's life. It wasn't long before Daniel began confiding in Chloe. Small complaints about the monotony of married life, frustrations with work, and moments of vulnerability he no longer shared with his wife. Chloe listened, comforted, and over time became the person he turned to. What was once an innocent sisterly gesture of support had grown into a hidden emotional bond, and an undercurrent of temptation that neither of them could deny. Samantha remained unaware. She continued believing she was helping her sister during a rough patch. But behind the polite smiles and shared dinners, a quiet betrayal had begun to form. Chloe wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was slowly slipping into her sister's.